All right, so I often hear that Satan was a musician in heaven, and I hear these things kind of all the time, especially at church or amongst Christians and even pastors in their sermons. Everyone kind of has this idea that Satan was a musician in heaven, and they also believe that the word Lucifer refers to Satan. So in this video, I'm going to make three main points. One is that Lucifer does not refer to Satan, and we're going to look at both of these passages in context, and especially these are laments about tyrannical rulers of Babylon and Tyre and the judgment that will come upon them. And finally, it is questionable that Ezekiel 28 even mentions musical instruments at all. And let's begin by looking at Isaiah 14, which in the King James Version does mention the word Lucifer, which comes from the Latin Vulgate right here on the left. See, it's all in Latin. And the word Lucifer is right there because it's a Latin word. But the Latin Lucifer is a translation of the Hebrew Hallel, light-bearing object in the sky, shining one. Yeah, and we do see that Venus and all the planets, the so-called planets, that's where we get the word deception, by the way, plane, wandering stars, deceptive stars. They do shine their own light. Just go look at it. That's kind of a different topic. But shining one, morning star or day star, the planet Venus. Prominent in the morning, referring to the majesty and high status of a king. Isaiah 14:12, that's the verse we're looking at right there. Note, KJV translates as Lucifer, which I showed you is a Latin word used in the Latin Vulgate. The KJV uses quite a few Latin words. But it is begging the question to say this must then refer to Satan. So basically it's you're assuming it refers to Satan because of what happened after that is Lucifer did become associated with Satan in popular culture, especially through books like Dante's Inferno or Paradise Lost or whatever. Culture kind of picked up on this Lucifer idea and tied it in with Satan. They even make TV shows about it now, but Lucifer is not really Satan, actually, at all. And in fact, this guy's name in the show is Lucifer Morningstar. And this is a TV show. It's the theology of this show is mainly based on Dante's Inferno and Milton's Paradise Lost and a bunch of Gnosticism. Eve was a lesbian in this show, okay? And all the actors are inverted. There's nothing biblical about this show at all. And for reference, here's a few Latin dictionaries and what they have to say about Lucifer. It says here, the morning star, the planet Venus. Lucifer, the morning star, the planet Venus. Same thing. And here's some certain references. And, it all relates to the word light. These different related words that all are talking about light somehow. That's why the word Lucifer is talking about a star, the morning star, the planet Venus. Remember, planets are actually stars. They shine their own light. And if you're not sure about that, just go out and look at it for yourself, if you dare. And this one here says Lucifer, Latin light bringer, a term the Vulgate and KJV use in Isaiah 14:12-14, which is the passage we're going to look at, for the king of Babylon. See, it's referring to the king of Babylon who has exalted himself as the morning star, which is kind of a symbol of greatness, but which has been used through Christian history and popular culture, I would add, to refer to Satan. So the word Lucifer is used 3 times in the Latin Vulgate. So Job 11:17 has the word Lucifer right there. Isaiah 14:12, which we talked about already. And then 2 Peter 1:19, the word Lucifer is there. So let's check out these verses here. So Job 11:17, and your life will be brighter than the noonday. Its darkness will be like the morning. Now, it could be that the morning and morning star kind of signify the same idea of the dawn, right? Its darkness will be like the dawn. 2 Peter 1:19, until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts. All right, so this is in the Latin Vulgate, this is translated as Lucifer. So if you're going to claim that Lucifer means Satan, then wouldn't you want to translate this one here as until the day dawns and Satan rises in your hearts? Now, the Latin says Lucifer. That's just the Latin word for light or morning or dawn or the morning star. All right, there's nothing strange going on. It's just a word that means something. And people think it means what it doesn't actually mean because of all this tradition and popular culture and all this stuff. And it's not talking about Satan in any of these verses. It's talking about the morning star. It's talking about light. Again, Job 11, its darkness will be like the morning. Its darkness will be like Satan. You can't say this one verse here is talking about Satan and the other ones are talking about the morning star. All right, they're all talking about the morning star, which is not talking about Satan at all. But in the King James Version, only Isaiah 14:12 repeated this name Lucifer. So the word Lucifer only shows up once in the old English Bibles, and these other ones are usually translated as morning star or morning. People automatically assume this word Lucifer means Satan, but it really never, ever meant Satan. Now let's look at the context and genre of these passages. It says, take up this taunt. It's kind of like a lament or a parody against the king of Babylon. All right, so everything they say after that in these quotations are about the king of Babylon. That's what this is about. And we see this in Ezekiel 28, which we'll look at next, that these are taunts or laments against these wicked, tyrannical kings. And they're comparing them. These kings thought they were gods. They thought they ruled the world. But who rules the world, really? God rules the world, all right? So they're talking about their pride, and the music of their harps is not talking about the king of Babylon playing his harp. It's talking about the extravagant stuff he had in his palace, symbols of his power. And now he's just brought down to Sheol. He's been humbled. Oh, how you have fallen from heaven, king of Babylon, all right? It's not they're not talking about Satan at all. Satan is not the object of this taunt or this satirical lament. All right, it's kind of like judgment has come upon the king of Babylon. Genre is part of context. This is prophetic literature. It's almost like poetry, really. In fact, some scholars have said this is a poem. All right, so this is prophetic, poetic, metaphorical, symbolic language. Now, if you go to church, I would say every time I've heard a pastor or anyone, any church member talk about this, they believe Lucifer is Satan. And they'll cite Isaiah 14, verse 12. And they'll also say Satan was a musician. You know, so even they're saying it's metaphorical, I guess, because Satan's never even mentioned. So star of the morning, I guess they're saying is a metaphor for Satan. But really, the word in Latin is Lucifer, which I showed you already, which is what the King James uses. Lucifer is Hallel in Hebrew, which is what it was written in originally. And Hallel is shining one, morning star, day star, the planet Venus. Begging the question means it's an assumption that does not have any support. It's not a solid argument to say that Lucifer means Satan. All right, and now in the Septuagint, Esophoros, which is the same thing. It just means morning star, basically, star of the dawn. Satan was not a musician in heaven. This misunderstanding of the word Lucifer has been going on for centuries, so you're not going to be able to correct this mistake in 5 minutes in front of your biblically illiterate friends at church. You know, and I'm not going to correct it by making this little video here, and I'm going to get lots of hate comments. Now let's look at a very similar passage in Ezekiel 28, and it's very important to look at this in context. We're just going to look at the headings to get a sense of what the previous chapters were about in Ezekiel. So the abominations of the fathers of Israel, prophecy of Yahweh's sword. So this is all kind of a judgment kind of stuff. Chapter 22, the abominations of Israel. Kind of like the church today, right? Lots of abominations going on in the church. We get the rulers we deserve, don't we? Chapter 25, to put this into context, we got a prophecy against Ammon. Son of man, set your face toward the sons of Ammon and prophesy against them. So it's kind of like a lament. And there's here a prophecy against Moab. And there's against Edom, prophecy against the Philistines, prophecy against Tyre. Chapter 26. All right, so this prophecy against Tyre begins back in chapter 26. And you can read all that for yourself if you wish. There's a lament over Tyre, chapter 27, a lamentation over Tyre. And here's prophecy against the king of Tyre, lamentation over the king of Tyre, prophecy against Sidon. They're just prophesying and lamenting and kind of judging all these different people. Prophecy against Egypt, right? There is against Egypt. It's just a whole list of places Yahweh's judging all these wicked nations, including Israel, actually. So it just goes on and on. So why do they talk about Satan in the middle of all this? All right, it doesn't say the word Satan. It's not talking about Satan. So the king of Tyre said, I am a god, yet you are a man and not God. All right, this is a lament about the king of Tyre. The lament is actually a specific genre, talking about the pride and arrogance of a king and then the judgment that will come upon him. Because you have made your heart like the heart of God, I will bring strangers upon you, the most ruthless of the nations. They will draw their swords against the beauty of your wisdom and defile your splendor. So is a nation going to rise up against Satan and fight him with swords? No. They will bring you down to the pit, and you will die the death of those who are slain. In the heart of the seas, will you still say, I am a god? Because they're talking about the king of Tyre, though you are a man and not God. Son of man, take up a lamentation over the king of Tyre, and say to him, Thus says the Lord Yahweh, you had the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. The ruby, the topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the lapis lazuli, the turquoise, and the emerald, and the gold, the workmanship of your settings and sockets. Okay, so I guess people are reading the King James to get this musician language, tabrets and the pipes. Yeah, so they see these as being musical instruments. Here, those words are not even translated in terms of musical instruments anyway. But even if you think they are musical instruments, Satan's not playing them. He's not in the story at all. It's only in your imagination. In the ESV, instead of your tambourines and pipes, it says your settings and your engravings. Now, there's some people who believe that it may have been something in the shape of a tambourine, and it's really kind of talking about all these things. See, they have every precious stone was your covering. This would be like the clothing. The clothing would have all these expensive gems and jewelry on them, crafted in gold. Were your tambourines? Like, why would your tambourine be made out of gold? I guess people think this is talking about they're playing gold tambourines and flutes or something. But really, verse 13 seems to be about clothing, because these kings were wealthy and they dressed in very fancy, expensive clothing. So really what I think this means is that because God ultimately chooses the rulers of this world, even the ones who turn out to be wicked. So he's kind of saying, hey, I gave you the opportunity to be king, and you blew it, right? Just like Adam was king in the Garden of Eden, these guys were kind of like Adam in the sense that they were also kings. Now, some people think this passage actually refers to Adam. I'm not convinced by that either, because I think it's about the king of Tyre, and also Isaiah 14 about the king of Babylon. And it's also about the nations as a whole, the nation of Tyre and the nation of Babylon. But it kind of relates to Adam in the sense that they were both kings and that they both blew it. All right, people are taking this way too literally when it's in the prophetic book full of symbolism. This whole passage, this last part, some people say that it's a fragment and they don't really have the original version. It says right here in the footnote in ESV, the meaning of the Hebrew phrase is uncertain. So there you go. So you're gonna say that Satan. First of all, this passage is not even about Satan at all. So Satan was not a musician, because this is not about Satan at all. Even if you think this is about music, Satan's not even mentioned in this passage at all. And then it's like, oh, what do you mean? It says they're in the Garden of Eden. They're talking about the king of Tyre, all right? This is kind of poetic. It's another metaphor using hyperbole to talk about how this king of Tyre, okay, so the king of Tyre is the one who thinks he's a god, all right? Metaphorically, you were in the Garden of Eden. Metaphorically, you had all these, you were crowned with all these jewels. The king of Tyre was not a literal cherub, but that's just the kind of the poetic, prophetic language used in these laments. They always kind of exaggerate the greatness of these kings in order to bring them down. That's the whole thing, is they're using hyperbole to say, wow, you were the greatest person who ever lived, and now you're the scum of the earth, all right? So they're using this kind of language, talking about being in the Garden of Eden, talking about being a cherub, talking about being this or that. You were this great, amazing, almost like a demigod kind of figure, and now you've been thrown down to earth, or even you've been thrown down into Sheol. I will cast you out, right? They've been cast out. I will lay thee before kings, all right? So other kings will destroy you. I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that behold thee. You have come to a dreadful end. Well, Satan hasn't come to a dreadful end yet. And again, so remember, this is in the context that there's about 10 different laments over 10 different people and 10 different kings and different nations. And why would this one talk about Satan, but the others don't? So it's really just kind of a poetic roasting of the king of Tyre and of Tyre as a nation, as a whole, as judgment. Raise the lamentation over the king of Tyre. It's not a lamentation about Satan. It's a lament over the king of Tyre. Now, the book of Ezekiel is incredibly symbolic, similar to the book of Revelation. And the word Lucifer is not even used in Ezekiel 28. This is about the king of Tyre. Isaiah 14 is about Babylon. So they're using similar techniques, similar literary devices to make their laments over different people, and they're not drawing upon a fall of Satan story. How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. They're comparing this king of Babylon to Venus, the star, because that's what they think they are. They think they're gods. They're not talking about the king of Babylon actually playing music. This is talking about his entourage, your pride in the music of your harps, and talking about everything that goes on in his palace. He just thought he was this amazing king, but he's been brought down to Sheol, and now he's full of maggots and worms. The king who thought he was a god, he thought he was the brightest star in the sky, now he's been cut down to the earth. You who have weakened the nations, right? Because he's a king with an army. So he's talking about the king right there, literally. And here there's metaphorical language. That's how language works, by the way. This is Isaiah. This is prophecy. Prophets use highly symbolic and metaphorical language to describe something. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. That's what the king of Babylon said. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly. Well, guess what? He had pride. That's talking about the pride of a human being. This is not talking about Satan. This is not Satan. This is Venus. People in the occult and the elite, they worship Venus, a mother goddess figure. Now, it may be androgynous, like the Baphomet, but it goes by different names. District of Columbia, Isis, Diana, Astarte, the great goddess Artemis, whom all of Asia and the world worship. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. This is the mother goddess figure. Mary, mother goddess. Why are the Catholic churches named after Mary instead of Jesus or God? There's legitimate debate about what these words mean here, these Hebrew words, but this passage is not about Satan anyway. So whoever's playing these musical instruments, if that's what they are, it's not Satan. And it's really nobody. It's the king of Tyre, but he's not even playing those instruments anyway either. This is prophetic literature. And more specifically, this is a lament. Satan was not a musician in heaven. It doesn't even say that, because they're not even talking about Satan at all. Satan's not even part of this whole story in these passages here. There are plenty of other passages about Satan, which I can talk about in other videos, but these passages are not about Satan, about a prideful, arrogant king who's been brought down to earth by God and humbled and judged and punished. All right, using very poetic, prophetic language. Kind of like Jesus and the parables, right? Those are not literal, actual, factual stories. Those are parables that have a message and a meaning. But it's about a real person, the king of Tyre. Doesn't mean everything that they say about him is literally true, but it's metaphorically true, spiritually true. It gets down to the deeper level of his attitude and his pride and his arrogance and his nature. And it also reveals a lot about God to us, that God will judge the kings of this earth for their pride and arrogance. And God does not like tyrannical dictators.